30 p.m. only on Bloomberg Quint.
He's for long been known as the thinking intellectual politician. His views on various subjects have been sought because of how balanced and well thought they've largely been. Until a few months ago, Baijayant Panda was a member of parliament from Kendrapada in Odisha before he severed ties with his party, the Biju Janata Dal. He has now written a book which is a compilation of his views on a range of subjects from the Modi government to parliamentary democracy in India, simultaneous elections and universal basic income, among others. Speaking to us on the book and his future plans now is Mr. Jay Panda. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Mr. Panda, you've written a book called Lutyens' Maverick. Are you Lutyens' Maverick and why?
I have, in the 18 years that I spent in Parliament, I tried to keep my outsider instinct alive, which means that while I had one leg here in Delhi, in Parliament, in the world of policy making, I had another foot firmly back home in the constituency and in the rural areas of Odisha, because I think it is important to balance the two. Sometimes policy making happens here in a vacuum without clearly understanding what is required or what is needed back home, and vice versa. Sometimes there are expectations on the ground which are very difficult to translate into policy here in Delhi. So yes, I do consider myself a bit of a maverick. I have kept pushing the envelope all these years, suggesting radical ideas and supporting change and reform in the system.
Before we go ahead, I have to ask you something that everyone has been wondering about. You've of course spoken about it, but since I have the opportunity, what caused you to leave the Biju Janata Dal? What exactly happened between you and Odisha Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik? Because you've been one of the people who founded the party, and the general, premise is, the perception is that it was your closeness to the BJP that has led to this split. Is there any truth to that?
So this is a false propaganda that has been spread about me, and the evidence of that is very clear. I left the BJD and Parliament 7 months ago, and many of these commentators had predicted that I would join the BJP and maybe have some position, but it's been 7 months and I have not done that. In fact, I have spent this time traveling extensively in Odisha, talking to people to take feedback about what I should do. So clearly that is not true. Let me tell you what went wrong. You're right, I was involved with the very beginnings of the founding of the BJD, and I was a proud member for more than 15 years. I worked very hard. Those of you and your colleagues who knew me in the early days in Delhi, I worked very hard to build the BJD's image at a national level. It was not treated seriously. Naveen was treated like a socialite. I had to work very hard at Delhi level to build the image. And also I was very proud of what Naveen was doing back in Odisha in the first 2 terms, nearly first 3 terms. Very strong action against corruption and crime. I was proud to be part of that movement. But in the last 5 years, it all went wrong. The party has been hijacked by a new coterie that had nothing to do with the founding or the building up of the party. Naveen seems to have delegated almost all authority to this coterie, including a shocking scenario of a serving IS officer who is running the party, collecting funds, distributing tickets. This has never happened before. And the sharp rise of crime and corruption in Odisha is something that is not tenable. I could not continue anymore. If you, the national media, when you have a horrible case of gang rape or murder like you had in J&K or in Uttar Pradesh, the national media covers it as it should. But we have 3 to 4 such cases every week in Odisha, and it doesn't get coverage. But that doesn't mean people are not outraged. In Odisha, there's a lot of anger against this. It is not tenable to support that kind of turn that the party has taken.
You know, Naveen Patnaik has this aura of invincibility. of course, backed by his long tenure at the helm of the government of Odisha. Do you think it still stands? Because he will be facing elections in just a few months. The state will go to polls, of course, with the general elections as well.
You've asked a very important question, and this is about the aura. Naveen Patnaik has won 4 terms, and he will be seeking a 5th term in the elections which are coming up now. Now, one of the main reasons, see, his personal popularity had risen very high because of exactly what I told you, of the very strong early actions against corruption and crime. Now, that has, as I told you, changed in the last 5 years. And you can see from the opinion polls by many national organizations and many national publications and media houses that although he still has a lot of goodwill, his popularity level today is far lower than what it used to be in earlier years. So there is a degree of vulnerability there. And the party's popularity was always much lower than his own personal popularity, and the party's acceptability today is extremely low because of the large number of criminals who have got into the party and are holding their members and holding office. So one of the other things which lends this aura of invincibility is that the BJD has very successfully played the Congress and BJP against each other, convincing both that they should not go hammer and tongs against the BJD because it will help the other national party. Now the Congress fell into this ruse, and as a result it slipped. Congress was the largest party when BJD was founded, but it has slipped into 3rd position now in Odisha. And the BJP, after growing into the 2nd position over the last 5 years, seems to be now falling into that same trap. And many are accusing it of going soft on BJD precisely for this reason. So that aura is, I think it's a brilliant act of smoke and mirrors, but somebody has to have the guts to expose that.
And who will that somebody be, Mr. Panda? Will it be the BJP? Will you join the BJP in some fashion or sense for doing this? Are you going to fight the next elections from Kendrapada again?
So I have been speaking out, as you know. First, before quitting the BJD, before speaking out openly, I tried very hard to speak inside the party to try to get the party to change course, to go back to its original principles and objectives. When that didn't work and I had to speak out publicly, I was sidelined, I was physically assaulted, after which I decided to quit the party and quit Parliament. Now, after me, many other people have started speaking out. There are several political leaders in Odisha who are speaking out against the crime and corruption and joblessness in Odisha. Both the major national parties, BJP and Congress, have also begun speaking out. But the question is, are they really going to go the next step and do something about it? Because I'm not interested in only speaking about these problems that Odisha has. I want to take action on the ground and bring about reform and bring about change. You see, I told you about how both these parties have been basically suckered into not fighting hard in Odisha. When the UPA was in government for 10 years, it did not act against the severe corruption allegations in Odisha on the chit fund scam, 20,000 crores scam, many lakhs of families defrauded of their life's earnings, no real serious action taken. And the same thing happened in the last 5 years. Even though the CBI was forced to do an inquiry by a court order, there has been no real progress in the cases. The tracks are growing cold. So I'm willing to join hands with anybody that is serious about not just talking, but bringing about real change in Odisha. And if the major national parties don't have the stomach for that fight, then there are plenty of outraged political leaders in Odisha and youth support for bringing about this change that can happen locally in Odisha.
So are you talking about forming a different party?
So that is one of the options. In fact, if you monitor Odisha media, you will see that many leaders and many members of the public have been urging me to be involved in the founding of a new party. This is not something to be done lightly. It's a very tough course to follow, but it is one of the options that is being considered. And of course, I have friends in the major parties also. I have been discussing with them as to what would be the right combination of efforts to bring about change in Odisha. And I'm nearing a decision. Elections are nearing and the people of Odisha have been wanting me to announce my decision. They have a right to know. I will decide and announce it soon.
But your natural alliance seems to be with the BJP. I went through your book, of course, and I've been reading your articles, and this is a compilation of the articles that you've printed publicly on a lot of issues. Maybe if you talk about simultaneous elections or even your praise of the Modi government in the last 4 years, there seems to be a natural alignment there. Is that something that you would, of course, explore, even if you have a separate party and if push comes to shove? Is the BJP your most natural ally?
See, this is too simplistic a reading. Let me explain. When the BJD was founded, it started life as an ally of the BJP, and there was a common program, common minimum program. So I was championing many of those ideas. Now, it so happened the alliance broke, but I kept championing those ideas, whether it was Vajpayee ji as Prime Minister or Dr. Manmohan Singh as Prime Minister or Modi ji as Prime Minister. In Prime Minister Modi's tenure, some of these ideas have actually been implemented. Take the example of the campaign. I was campaigning against VVIP privileges, and I wanted the removal of the red light beacons from VVIP cars. This decision happened a couple of years ago under the present government. So I welcomed it because I have been campaigning for that for 15 years. And many people use that and many similar examples to say that I'm aligned with the Modi government. It's not true. I'm aligned to the ideas that I have been espousing, and whoever implements them, if it is Modi ji, then good. If it is somebody else, that's also good. I will support the implementation of those ideas. Now, regarding what is going to happen as far as my next step is concerned and as far as Odisha is concerned, it will, as I said, depend on who is committed to bringing about change, who is prepared to tackle the rising crime and the rising corruption in Odisha. Now, the BJP has been speaking about it, but I gave you examples of how they have also not taken any real action to tackle that rising crime and corruption. So it depends on who is willing to actually fight and not just talk about it. Fight for change, fight for clean governance in Odisha. That's what will be a key part of my decision.
Okay, let me come back to the book and a bit of national politics as well. Among the articles that make it to this book is one which is titled "What Modi Can Do Next." It was first published in 2017 in August, and in that you are, of course, very complimentary about a number of schemes that have been done. You explore what can happen next. What is your assessment today? After results in 5 states, out of which the Congress has won 3, after a general idea that demonetization has not yielded the results that were promised, GST has been patchy, job losses has become a big issue. What is your current view on how the Modi government has performed and where it stands politically?
I think the election is wide open today after the developments of the recent state elections. But just a quick aside, my book is not just a compilation of my earlier articles. It has a lot of fresh commentary to put things in perspective. And I would urge your readers to consider taking a look at the book. It's called Lutyens' Maverick. Now, regarding the political situation, I think a year ago it had been conventional wisdom that the NDA was definitely getting a second term. But today that conventional wisdom has changed after the state elections, and I think it is correct to say that the election is open. It will be a contest. On the one hand, the Congress seems to be much more energetic today. On the other hand, you have several regional parties getting very active and in fact trying to work in cooperation with each other. These will all be major factors, and there is no way that NDA coming back can be taken for granted. But at the same time, nobody should write off the NDA and Prime Minister Modi, because he is perhaps the most gifted communicator in a generation in our politics, certainly since Vajpayee ji. And there is plenty of good work has been done that can be marketed properly. GST may have had its problems and created a lot of difficulties, but 50 years from now, people will be looking back at GST as a seminal moment, as a turning point in India's growth story and India's fight against poverty. Now, I think with 4 to 5 months left before the elections, the game is wide open. It depends on whether it is Prime Minister Modi or his opponents who are better able to utilize the time ahead, and that will be the deciding factor in the elections.
What do you make of Rahul Gandhi and his newfound aggression? We've seen him pitch, the Rafale controversy in a major way in Parliament. That is the latest example, which is why I'm bringing it up. Do you think that he is managing to pitch himself as a primary opponent for Narendra Modi? And will the Rafale controversy go any way in helping him in this?
I think it is unquestionable that he should be complimented for his persistence, because for many years now the Congress has been having setback after setback. Not just the 2014 elections, but right after the 2009 elections they started getting mired in controversies and scams. They lost the elections, and from 2014 onwards they had many other setbacks, losing state after state after state. And Rahul Gandhi had become the butt of jokes and memes, but to persist, to have the stomach to keep striving and to come out punching, you have to give him credit for sheer guts and sheer perseverance. Now, having said that, you asked about Rafale. I think both Finance Minister Arun Jaitley and Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman acquitted themselves very well in the debate on Parliament. I think they answered the questions very candidly. So I don't know how far the Rafale issue is going to matter, because if you go to rural India, people really can't tell you what Rafale is or what the scandal is about, or the alleged scandal is about. But I see it differently. The Rafale allegations may or may not have merit, but it has served as a platform for Rahul Gandhi and the opposition to come together and to show that they are still willing to fight it out.
What about issues like agricultural distress and jobs? We saw them play out in the election results in 5 states recently. Do you think that these are issues which could hurt the BJP's prospects enough to really change the results?
In fact, in 2 of the chapters in my book, yes, I have mentioned these issues. One is that while the BJP had come into pole position as being the biggest party now, which was not the case in earlier years, it has a challenge in rural India because farmers' distress is real and joblessness is real. Now, these are the 2 biggest problems facing India economically today, and politically the 2 biggest issues in leading up to the general elections in 2019. But if we are frank, we have to admit that both farmers' distress and joblessness are not a new thing. It's not a problem that suddenly popped out of nowhere in the last 5 years. These are persisting problems from the last many decades, because India missed the bus in the 60s and 70s and 80s to get on the high growth bandwagon like many other Asian countries did, and transformed themselves from poverty into development. So these are age-old problems. But the fact is, I think this government also is partly responsible in having set expectations very high. So on the one hand, you could argue that, look, these problems are there for so many decades. How can it be solved in 5 years? They should be given a second chance. Maybe they should have another 5 years to solve the problems. Or you could argue that, look, you promised to set it right and you haven't yet. So, we will not give you a second chance. This is where the battle of perceptions is going to be fought, and this is where it will matter immensely, both on the wisdom and judgment of the voters, that is 5 years enough to have solved these problems, or do they deserve a second chance, and also the ability of Prime Minister Modi and his team to convince that, look, it is not reasonable to expect that such fundamental problems can be solved in 5 years. They require a second term.
Where do you stand, Mr. Panda? Because you've been a close observer of the policy decisions of this government. You've been complimentary in some parts. Do you think that they've done a good enough job and deserve to be brought back? Do you think Prime Minister Modi deserves a second chance?
People sometimes read the headlines rather than the chapters. And if you read the book, and you'll see my main, there's a lot of new commentary in it also, where I explain that it's important to not see things black and white, to see the nuance. And there are many areas I have pointed out where the current government has missed opportunities, which it has had the opportunity. The fact is, a lot has happened. I'm a strong supporter of GST, but I think the streamlining of GST, which is taking place now in the last 2 months, it should have happened a year ago, so that a lot of the pain and difficulties people would not have felt. But I remain a supporter of GST. Now let's come to the farm problem. As I said, it's an ongoing problem. We have a real dilemma today, that should we have loan waivers? Loan waivers are not a solution, but if you don't have some sort of relief for farmers, today you have millions of farmers in real distress. They are committing suicide. No political party can ignore their distress. So perhaps an attitude has to be taken that some relief has to be given to farmers immediately in the short term, which will not help to solve the problem in the future, but other steps have to be taken to solve the problem. And I have advocated ideas like cash transfers. Now, this has been demonstrated very successfully in Telangana by the government there, by using cash transfers for farmers as an alternative to MSP, and that has worked politically. Also, it works economically. These are ideas that need to be implemented. Now, whether Prime Minister Modi deserves a second chance, these will be important factors. I think in many ways he has done a good job, but since I am elected from Odisha, my focus primarily has to be to improve the lot of my fellow Odias. The 40 million of my fellow Odias who are forced to migrate outside and work in brick kilns in danger areas like Iraq and Afghanistan because there are no jobs at home. I will be willing to lend my support to whoever, whether it is Prime Minister Modi or one of the other options, which will bring about change in Odisha, because it's important for all states to grow, for India to be better.
Absolutely. Just one question of what you think about this Mahagathbandhan, which is trying to take shape right now. Do you think there will be a workable equation in time for the general elections, or we will see where the chips fall once the votes are cast, and then some kind of a formation will emerge?
Mahagathbandhans are very difficult to put together in India because of the extreme divergence in ideology and clashing egos, and they're especially difficult pre-election. To agree on common ground, pre-election is very difficult. Post-election, under compulsion, many people come together, but pre-election is very, very hard. Now, we have seen recently that when you had by-elections to 1 or 2 seats, then such Gathbandhans could happen. And in fact, they showed that they are effective. But when you had state level elections, it was very difficult for several parties to come together because there are multiple seats, not just 1 or 2 seats. So when you have national level elections, it becomes much more difficult, because we are not just talking about 1 or 2 seats here, 1 or 2 states there, but many hundreds of seats across many states all across the country. It's not easy, but if they can come together, the arithmetic is fairly compelling. I think it will have a very important effect in the elections.
All right. Fascinating chat with you, Mr. Panda. Best of luck for your book. Lutyens' Maverick launches today. It's an excellent read for anyone who is interested in politics and policy from a very well thought out prism. Best of luck, Mr. Panda, and thank you for speaking with us.